Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. This is episode 265. And to say that I'm excited would be an understatement. I've got a fantastic guest. I've been a fanboy and just think he's the bee's knees, basically. I've got Chris Coyier as my guest on the show. Chris.
Woo!
Woo!
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure. I love getting a chance to talk.
And also, I've got my friend John Locke, a former co-host of the show, coming on. Kim couldn't make it this week, so I thought I would ask John because he's equally a great fan of Chris. John, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure thing. John Locke of Lockdown Design, holding it down.
And I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. We're a maintenance support company only with WordPress, with a speciality with learning management systems and membership sites. And before we go into the interview, I just want to quickly talk about our main sponsor, which is Kinster Hosting. And they've been hosting the WP-Tonic website now, I think, for 4 months now, and also some of my clients' websites. And I've got to say, I've just been really impressed with the speed of the hosting, the customer support. It's just been fantastic. And if you're looking for a really good WordPress hosting solution for you or your clients, go to the WP-Tonic website. There's banners. They are affiliate links. But if you use one of those, you'll be helping the show. And like I say, I push them because I use them myself. So I think they're just a great hosting company. Right, let's get into it. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Chris. You're noted as the joint founder of CodePen, but also the founder of CSS-Tricks, which I've got to say kind of really introduced me to the world of front-end development. Let's start off with CodePen. How's it going with CodePen? I think it's been over 3-4 years that you've been running it as a joint.
It's something like 5-6. Yeah.
It just goes so quick, doesn't it?
I know. So yeah. CodePen's going great. In fact, we're we have a few doing a little bit of hiring, although I wish we were hiring like 50 people. We're not quite there yet. We're still a very small company. I think we're 7 or 8 kind of thing, but that feels big to me. I've never been in charge of that many people before.
Responsibilities, Chris.
Yeah. It's tough stuff. But we're throwing a conference this year. That's big news for us for the first time. So that's CodePenWorldsFair.com. Check that out.
What's the why are you doing that? Because that's a big undertaking to do a conference. What's the thoughts behind that, Chris?
It's a community website anyway. There's all these people on it that meet each other and know each other. That we have loads of people that do it. It almost just seems like of course we should do this. Of course we should at least attempt once to try to get people together and kind of celebrate the idea of what's possible in the browser and art online and just kind of see what happens. So it's still coming together, really, but the idea is we're going to hold it in Chicago, which has some history of World's Fairs anyway, so it's kind of thematically playing off that, and having one day where, well, both of the days of the conference are at a big warehouse space called like Morgan Manufacturing in downtown Chicago. But it's just like kind of a big, raw, but fancied up warehouse space that you can have a lot of opportunity to do stuff inside. So we're just going to, fill it up with people doing interesting art. Yeah.
Party, are you? All right.
Yeah, so it's new.
Well, because funny enough, there's been some articles recently about that conferences were kind of dying, really. But I never agreed with that. I think your kind of formal trade show kind of thing, probably, I'm not too sure about that. But I think actually meeting new users, trying to build a community, it still has a kind of strong place, doesn't it, Chris?
I hope so. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I've read all the same articles you have, but I've had that thought over the years that, like, holy cow, is there a lot of these conferences? How can the world possibly sustain this many? And maybe it's something like, I don't know, that people are writing an article like it's got to swing back the other way. Some of these gotta fold kind of thing. I think so many of them are run at like the normal laws of economics don't apply almost, that so many people run them at a loss or breaking even, that it's like normally in the real world people would stop doing them. But there's something about a conference that's so like fun and has other benefits that people just keep doing them anyway. So it's like this weird thing that they don't seem to be going anywhere.
Yeah, I've noticed.
And if it's not harming anyone, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. But as a trend in general with online, there seems to be some people going in one direction and there's other people going the other direction, really. Let's get back onto CodePen. So how are there any major developments that in 2018 around CodePen or that you're excited about?
Sure. I mean, so if people have never heard of it at all, I mean, what it kind of is a code editor in the browser. That's maybe you could call that the heart and soul of CodePen sometimes, is that it's nothing without that. There's all this other stuff you can do, but the idea is that there's a thing called pens on CodePen, big surprise. And you fire one of those up, and it's basically you can write HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and see the results of what you're doing in real time. And that's so great for things like teaching. We have classrooms that use it, that everybody go to CodePen, and then you start, typing in HTML and seeing the results of that, and students get it, and it's great. And then you can, of course, hit save on it, and it gives you a URL of what you just did. So that's kind of useful, too, because now I'll never lose it. I can always update it at any time. I can share it with people, and now I have this like thing that exists on the web that I can share. And people use that for all kinds of reasons. Some people even use it kind of to show off themselves. Like, look at this amazing thing that I did. Or they just use it to play around. Or they'll build a little component for a client and send them that for sign-off kind of. So the use cases of it are a lot. And you can use it for whatever you want. There's no mandatory use case of CodePen. But, as CodePen has evolved over time and front-end development has changed over time, CodePen kind of needs to change with it. So one of the things early on was like, people don't, sometimes you need more than just one place to write HTML, one place to write CSS, one place. So we make CodePen projects, which is more like if you're working in Sublime Text or VS Code or Atom or whatever, you have that sidebar of files. You can drag stuff in there and you have folders, and it can be full of images and JSON data and whatever it wants to be. So that's what CodePen projects is, like kind of an evolution of CodePen. People need to be able to do more with this. And I would think in the next year we need to continue to keep up with what developers expect out of their development environments.
That sounds great. John, do you got any questions you'd like to?
Yeah, and I have noticed that you guys are having CodePen conferences, and you're a well-known speaker on the Event Apart lineup. And one thing that I wanted to ask you is, what can WordCamps learn from some of the larger conferences? What are some of the lessons that maybe could rub off on the WordPress community?
I wonder. I have been to some WordCamps, probably like 10-ish over the course of my life. So I'm not like a super expert on how all they do and how they work out and stuff. But I would almost think that there's an equal amount of stuff that could be learned either way. And then I would think by all accounts that WordCamp is like a shining example of like conferences done right, usually. If nothing else, but looking at them, how long they've been running and how excited people still get about them and how often an organizer will keep running it year after year. I mean, that's successful in a way. But I would think if somebody's trying to model, like, I want my conference to be like a WordCamp, that's trickier to pull off. One, you need a big community like WordPress has already got. And two, you in a sense, you kind of need to like not care. Ain't nobody getting rich running WordCamps. That's not like a motivation for it. So it's like you just need some like community love and some desire to get these people together for that to work. So I don't know that it's a model for somebody to just pick up and run with it for any brand. But like, what could WordPress steal, WordCamp steal from other conferences was kind of the question. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure that they should be looking at that as a model. I mean, the way Event Apart runs, and I'm a big fan of it, but it's very like it's a business. It's the life and livelihood of a small band of people that own and operate that brand and that conference. They make money running those things. It's a business very intentionally, and they have great speakers come, and it benefits everybody. But the alignment of what it's there for and what it's doing is kind of different. So I know for a fact that they get companies that like, they do a good job of like, you should send your employees here to learn at what's going on in the industry. And we know that it's a little bit expensive, but that's the deal, where it's not training, but it's like, this is, keeping your finger on the pulse of the industry kind of thing. And that's kind of a promise that they make. They say, this is what you're going to get when you come here. Whereas maybe WordCamps don't have like a promise like that. Maybe it's kind of implied, but it's not saying you should come to WordCamp because when you leave here, you'll be that much more attuned with what's happening. Maybe.
And I have a question too. I don't know if you've kept your finger on the pulse of like what's happening with WordPress core with Gutenberg. But just a generalized question, like, is that something that's on people's radar in the larger in the larger web community? And here's a question too, like, in the larger community, how do they perceive the WordPress ecosystem, and has that perception improved in the last few years?
Yeah, well, has it improved? I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to say because I see both sides of it so often. Which is one of them is WordPress rah rah rah, which you see in the inner circle, I'm sure, a lot. That this is an incredible product and lots of people make money using it. There's lots of people having success with it. It powers a third of the internet. Blah, blah. You hear those talking points all the time, which is great. And then there's an equally powerful force that's just eye-rolly at WordPress. That's just like, it takes any opportunity to just say how it's not appropriate for some situations or whatever. And it's whatever. It almost feels like a political argument in that it's just like a 50-50 pick some sides and have at it kind of thing that doesn't really benefit anybody. Anyway, I consider myself pretty middle ground. Like, I shouldn't even say that. More like pro WordPress. Like, why would anybody care what anybody else picks? Is website harming the internet? Absolutely not. If anything, it's helped tons of people. So, I don't feel like that's a bit of a rambling thought, but there's certainly it's not like the entire world's madly in love with WordPress. It's much more divided.
I guess it's good to be polarizing. That means you're taking a stance.
Yeah, I suppose there. And the Gutenberg stuff is absolutely fascinating. So I don't know how much you want to talk about that. It's not like I haven't followed it immensely closely, but we are, I'm even doing a podcast later this week with some people involved directly with Gutenberg because I do find it one of the more fascinating tech stories at the moment. Certainly some people could care less. It's just, oh, wow, WordPress is doing something. But I think if you work in WordPress, you certainly have products involved with WordPress. Holy crap, that's much more polarizing than even WordPress itself. My gosh.
Agree. Yeah.
I think we'll go for our break, and I think we will delve a little bit into that and some other subjects. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. We've had it seems to have gone in a flash, a quick conversation with Chris Coyier. We're continuing it. Great fun. It's caused a lot of controversial discussion, to say the least. The whole of this project, it's going to totally revolutionize publishing even more than what WordPress did.
Wow, I would hold off on that. I mean, it's just, it was like maybe a few months ago, I was like, oh, this is fascinating. This idea of blocks in an editor. I wonder how other CMSs have handled it. And it turns out like they all have, I would say everybody has blocks, some kind of way to deal with content blocks, whether it's a plugin or built in or native or whatever. So it feels a little bit like Apple in a way where they'll release a product and say, look, this is the best thing that's ever happened. But really it's like it was other people have beaten them to it. They just did a good job with it. So hopefully that's what Gutenberg turns out to be. This is certainly not the first concept of a block editor in a CMS, but it's a good take, you know.
Yeah, I take exactly what you've just said, but the thing is, we have another great individual, Morten Hendrickson from Linda, LinkedIn training, whatever it's called there, he's, he says that Matt, he's a bit like you. You thought it was just going to be an editor, but then when you delve into, what the core group and what Matt wants, it's much bigger than just an inline editor, what they're planning. And I think this is what's caused a lot of the controversial discussion about the whole project, really, Chris. So,
yeah, you probably follow it closer than I have. But look at, fire up Dropbox Paper and look at how their editor operates. Look at Notion.so. I think Notion's a fabulous note-taking tool. It's just like in the air lately. This idea of like having blocks in which you can customize what kind of block it is and have inline editing and stuff. It's just like the way it feels like that's just how people are expected to edit lately.
Yeah, let's go on to another subject because there's so much
Sure.
stuff, and I don't, you started CSS-Tricks, and I learned so much from it, Chris. A very passionate forum, by the way, and but I learned so much from it, and I think your videos and your training videos and your enthusiasm about learning in general has encouraged so many people. Did you have any idea that you're going to touch so many people in such a positive way through your blog and your training videos?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that, I guess. I mean, it's beyond my wildest dreams, if that makes sense. It's hard to imagine on day one what you're going to do, but that dream evolves as you evolve with the site, So it's like if you start out and you're working and you're like, I hope that this goes a little bit better for me. I have dreams that are a little bit above where I am right now. And then you hit those goals and your dreams just notch up with it a little bit. And now CSS-Tricks is over 10 years old. I guess we're edging on 11 years old, and that those dreams just keep notching up a little bit with it, and everything just kind of slowly evolves. I mean, it's been a WordPress site since day one, which is pretty cool, and I still feel pretty happy. I'd say at least once a week I have my dev environment open up, and I'm making sure I'm on the latest version of WordPress and seeing what's changed there, and making sure all the plugins are up to date. And that kind of thing. So that's been cool to evolve as well. As technology evolves and WordPress evolves, I can kind of make use of that as we go.
That's great. So really, the Tricks website and CodePen, the CodePen is an application and a community around helping developers with practice new technology and learn. And also your CSS-Tricks is a blog, but it's also really about education and training. So there's some linkage there, really. You've got the application, which is a community training, and this website. How do you see online training? Do you think it's still got a lot more traction in it? A lot more development to come about developing tools that can really make online training more than just videos and written documentation? How do you see that going?
Wow, it's one of the more fascinating things going on. I'd say that it's definitely not shaken out yet. There was a lot of us came up and made our bones working on websites at a time when there was hardly any training at all, and that you just figured out what you needed to figure out, and hopefully that went okay for you. And then, tech explodes, and now there's There's, people talk about a big hiring gap and that there's just not enough people to fill the shoes of all the tech jobs that need to be filled, and opportunities are rising. So I'm sure you've seen there's a proliferation of boot camps in different forms. There's ones that have brick and mortar schools all over the world. There's some that are online only. There's some that are both. There's some that are just sign up and watch this series of videos. There's some that are more just pick and choose little things that you want to watch. I don't know that CSS-Tricks or CodePen is necessarily part of that movement. Like, we're educational in a way, but if you don't come to me for training, I'd like to. Would be interesting someday, perhaps, but I don't have like a learning path for you. So if somebody's like, what do you recommend to learn web stuff these days? I have to dig around in my brain to figure out the perfect thing to send somebody to, because it's probably not something that I've built necessarily. That's more, I don't know, scattered than that.
I think I see where you're coming from, but I also think you're not being fair to yourself in a way. I know it's bizarre for me to say that, Chris, but I always remember what I admire about you is that I watched some of your videos where I think one was where you were trying to utilize MAMP, and there was a couple other things, and you say at the start, I've never used this before, it's new to me, I'm just going to go in. And there's a little bit of a struggle, and I actually admired you for videoing that and showing it, because it showed a master, somebody that's got a high skill level, but when they're showing something new, they go through a learning process. I actually admire you for having the courage to show that, and I think it encourages other people that there is a kind of I'm trying to struggle for the right word, that some people just learn things and they don't have to struggle. They're just so brilliant, it just comes to them straight away. But,
yeah. Very few, though, don't you think? I work with lots of incredibly smart people, and we're all the same. Nobody knows anything just out of the bucket. They're not like, I went to college for this. Don't worry, I have the answers. They're never like that. They're always just like, I guess I'll Google around and see what's up. Maybe I'll try it out. Yeah, to record it I've had feedback like that over the years, that they like seeing a video in which there's some mistakes and stuff. You're one of them, apparently. Some people feel exactly the opposite, and they don't want to watch that. They just want a shorter video it shows me exactly what I need to do. It depends on where somebody's at in life and what they need right at that moment. It depends. So I do have a bunch of videos on CSS-Tricks, but again, they're really random. They're just like, I just think this is interesting right now, so I'm going to shoot a video on it. It's not like, and there actually is some courses too, so I'm contradicting myself a little bit. And I have some courses that are meant to be watched 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but these days it's more like signing up for, you're probably going to get a better just like intro education if you go with some kind of online learning service that is designed that way.
That's great. John, you got some more questions?
I do, actually, and I want to piggyback on something that you asked Chris here. I know that on CSS-Tricks you have like a page where it's your most asked questions, and a lot of people come through and they turn to you for advice about like getting a job, or should I go back to college to learn stuff. And that's something I did as well to start on this, but a lot of people could be self-taught. My question to you is, and you have your ear to the ground, you're close to the metal. Why do more tech companies look for fully formed developers that are already fluent in like a million things, instead of like having internal apprenticeship programs?
That's a fascinating and wonderful question. That it's near and dear to me. And for one reason is that I recently needed to hire somebody kind of quickly at CodePen, and we did exactly what maybe you're pushing back on, is that I needed to write a job description, and against my better judgment, I had to write it that was like, we're looking for a React developer. That's what we really need. And like, and I cringed a little bit writing it, because I was like, and I even put some of that in the job posting itself. That was, I don't want to hire like this. I don't want to hire somebody who's super senior and already knows everything. But that's just the position we're in as a company of a size of less than 10. We have somebody going on maternity leave, and I need to replace her exact skill set right now for for something that, and I don't have time to take on somebody super junior and take me away from other things. So but I don't necessarily feel bad about it because I understand the place that we're in. But if we were 20 people, 30 people, I think there's a threshold that's fairly low that at some point we would stop that entirely. I look at companies like Sparkbox. They do a great job with this. They're much bigger than us and having a wonderful apprenticeship program that's like they grow their own developers in a way and give back in a big way to hiring not necessarily younger people, but people that just have less experience and teaching them what they need to go to grow up in the world. That's a happier world. If that's what I think that's a healthier environment for hiring, certainly. Not everybody can do it, and I guess I kind of get that.
And definitely that wasn't meant to be like a judgmental thing. And I totally get it because I've known agency principals been in that same position where they got to hire somebody that's going on maternity leave or they, have a family emergency or whatever. But definitely I think as the industry, we could grow our own like better. So Jonathan?
I agree. Let's do that more. I'd like to maybe even 1-to-1. You hire one really senior person and then the next person you hire maybe is junior and then everybody kind of can contribute to the growth of them, knowing full well that there's risk to it too. You hire them and you pay them a junior wage and you level them up a bunch. There's a really good chance they're going to leave you, and you need to think of that as like that's just the way of the world here. It's not a negative thing that they've left you.
Agree.
Got another question, John, and then.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to ask too, when you were like growing CSS-Tricks, obviously you were talking about how in the beginning you had goals and then once you reached them, your goals grew. How did you know when it was time to bring on people to help you with CSS-Tricks, and how did that free you up to do other things, maybe such as start CodePen?
Mm-hmm. That was super tricky. Because the second I remember feeling so clearly like I want and need this thing to make some money, like which became more and more true after I like left my job to, that was a huge source of income. So, but ever since day one with CSS, my goal was for it to be at least slightly business-like, for it to make money. And I remember feeling like I make this much money from this site right now. The second I hire somebody, that number just goes down a whole bunch, just immediately. And it took a while for me to like be okay with that, to get myself up to a number where I'm like, this is my salary, and that's just what I earn from the site, and everything else is like business money that goes to do business things. And that's only even a somewhat recent revelation, really. But my very first sticking my foot in that direction was I put forums on CSS-Tricks. Like, it uses BBPress, although it's changed technology a million times. It felt good to finally be on BBPress. Now everything on CSS-Tricks is under one kind of technological roof with WordPress, which is nice. But there's been forums on there forever, and at some point the forums started to become a little hard to manage, in that there was spam problems that we fought for years, which are now fortunately mostly handled by Akismet and mostly fine. But that was something, somebody needed to at least look for spam every day in the forums. Like, go in there and figure stuff out and encourage people. And if there's weird password problems or something, I was like, you know what, I should have a forums manager, and it should probably be someone from the forums already, and it should probably be someone who can really do this part-time, and it's a little tiny gig for them. This is not a full-time position. It's just a little bonus thing that maybe you can do while you're at work anyway or whatever. And so I hired a guy named Rob, and I think I paid him $150 a month or something. Just a very small amount of money to just do what you're doing in there anyway, but let's formalize it a little bit. Like, you're the spam master in the forums or whatever. And then that role grew and changed. And then I was like, okay, I got one employee. I could really use like some generic help, and ended up working with a woman named Sarah Cope for a long time, who was, I think, got her foot in the door. I was like, we should sell some t-shirts, and you can manage that whole thing. You can take the orders, ship the shirts, do all that type of stuff. I need help with that. But once she's already there, hey, why don't you help me edit articles sometimes? Why don't you help me with the inbox? And she just kind of became an assistant on CSS-Tricks for years and years and years. And now, now that your foot has been wet multiple times, it starts getting easier to be like, hey, maybe I should have like a couple of staff writers. We'll pay them a fixed cost, and so these roles have changed and evolved many times over the course of CSS-Tricks. Where we're at now, I'm finished going into my second month of having a full-on like content editor publisher. So a guy named Jeff Graham does that role for me, and that's been phenomenal this last month. But it's a bigger chunk of the profit of CSS-Tricks than I've ever given up before, because this is a bigger role. It's maybe not quite full-time, but it's not like a little tiny part-time thing either. So it's kind of in the middle, but it frees me up. CSS-Tricks isn't like a ton of work, but it's an everyday kind of job. And I prefer more and more. I'd like to give those jobs away to people to free up my time. If I have 2 more extra hours in the day, I can do stuff like be writing more, which I like to be doing anyway. I can use those hours to drum up interesting sponsors or come up with interesting sponsorship ideas and stuff. Hopefully, I can turn the hours that I buy back into paying his salary and more, which is always a roll of the dice, but
Oh, that's great. I think we're going to wrap it up for the podcast part of the show. Chris has agreed to keep on the discussion for a little while, which you'll be able to see on the WP-Tonic website with a full transcript of our conversation with Chris. Chris, it's been a pleasure having this discussion with you so far. How can people find more about you and what you're up to, Chris?
Yeah, I keep a personal website just for that very reason. A WordPress site, no less. And it's just my name.net. So chriscoyier.net is my personal site, which is just the basics about me. I put a section on the site that says things I want you to do, to be really clear about what I'm asking people of in this world. And it has a blog, and it says where I'm speaking next and things like that, and links to all the things that I do. So chriscoyier.net is a good place.
And my former co-host and friend, John Locke, how can people find out more about what you're up to?
You can follow me at my website, which is Lockdown Design. And how do people get a hold of you, Jonathan?
It's really easy. Go to the WP-Tonic website. We've got a ton of material for 2018 planned, written, and also video and the podcast as well. So there's going to be a ton of material around WordPress, learning management systems, business and membership sites. That's what we're going to be concentrating on 2018. And if you really want to support the website, go to iTunes and give us a review. I know it's a pain on PC, but not so bad on the Mac, and it does really help the show, and it'd be much appreciated. We'll see you next week when we're going to have somebody doing something interesting with WordPress. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye. Well, thanks for that, Chris. To continue the discussion, CodePen. What led to starting this? And am I correct that it's bootstrapped? It's financed through the profits that you make through it. Is that correct as well?
Mostly up until a year and a half ago or
right.
So. And even then it's kind of just an angel round, and
right.
We've been living just fine off of that and probably don't intend to take any more investment. But yeah, we had a $1 million round at one point, which helped us staff up. And then our goal was to, with any round of funding that puts you in the red right away. And your goal is to use the expertise of those people to grow to the point where you're in the black again. So that was a nerve-wracking dip and rise, and we've risen. So our desire to go back into the red with, hiring a bunch of more people or something is, so I think we're at the point where we want to just hire when we can afford it. Kind of thing. I think that's just going to be fine for us.
Hopefully, you don't mind me asking this, because I don't know what you and your partner's plans for CodePen are, and obviously some of it you've got to keep under the table, But what I was wondering, how difficult was it getting that angel investing? Because when you listen to some startup podcasts like Jason's one, This Week in Startups, they get the impression that you can only get finance from if the return is going to be massive, as he likes to say. I think the reality is a little bit different. What's your been experience about raising money?
We cheated in a way.
You did, Chris? Did you?
Yeah. Well, in a way, in that we didn't. I think the normal way to do it is to like assemble a team, and hopefully your team is very attractive, because that's a huge I don't know, selling point to a VC person. And you have all kinds of due diligence prepared. You maybe already have kind of a framework of a product already, and you have a deck that explains the potential and the potential audience size for your thing, and what you're going to charge, and what the charts could look like, and all that thing. And that's what VCs want to see. And then you say, I need X many millions of dollars to make this thing a reality. And you get funding for that. And that might be oversimplified, because I'm absolutely not an expert in this regards. We didn't really have to do any of that. We existed for a whole bunch of years on our own already. And our round was kind of friends and family. In fact, literally friends and family. It was some of our ex-bosses at another startup we worked for put in most of the money, and one of my co-founders, Tim's brother, put in a little bit too, and it added up to be $1 million. And we did it all very officially. It's not like they just opened a checkbook and wrote it. We still had to kind of pitch them on the idea and show them charts and talk to their financial people and structure the thing very officially, which involves, give X amount of stock and preferential stuff, and not an expert, but it was structured just like any other VC deal would be. But they're literally our friends. I call them up and talk to them about their children, not because I'm trying to butter them up, because they're my friends.
No, I think that's a great answer, Chris, because what you're showing is that you've been in business, you've got a lot of exposure. They know you're serious, and your other founders are totally serious about this. You've been running the business for a number of years. It's going in the right direction, and what you're showing is that there's various ways that you can get finance, isn't there?
There is, yeah, certainly, and friends and family is part of that. And even if you didn't have any way to cheat like we did, in a way, I still think we could do it. Like, if I didn't know anybody that was willing to do this, I could, even today, I could put a deck together for CodePen that shows what the potential is, and figured out some number that we wanted, and show what we're going to do with that money, and show what the potential market is for our thing. And go that road if we wanted to. And once in a while, it does appeal to me, because I'd love to have a huge team on CodePen. I mean, we really have a million ideas for this thing of things that we could do, but we can't do them all because we're very slow. We need to maintain what we got and keep everybody happy, make sure the support is being handled, and that the application is happy and healthy in itself. That's a full-time job right there. If you do no development on a product at all, it's still plenty of work just to keep running. Which you don't really see that from, like, a lot of people look at apps and you're like, it's feature complete, just leave it alone, go on vacation. You're like, yeah, right, not happening. It's a lot of work just to keep running. So if I had 15 more people and I could say, get you involved in the app and knowing the code base, and you're on this team and you're on this team, and I would love the opportunity to do that. That just can't just materialize out of thin air unless somebody dumped millions of dollars on us. But people don't do that. The trade-off for somebody dumping millions of dollars on you is a huge chunk of your company and a bunch of oversight that you probably don't want. The trade-off is a big deal. The trade-off is a much higher chance that you're not going to leave this thing and retire. Somebody else is going to.
Yeah. Hey, John, you got a question?
Yeah. What would be your advice for people that are looking to start their own company? Where our audience is a lot of consultants and people starting their own product, and smaller agencies. But what's your advice for being entrepreneurial?
Yeah. I'm a terrible guesser at whether an idea is good or not. I feel like I have a super terrible track record of people telling me an idea early on and just being like, stupid, and then watching them kill it, with their idea. And in the other direction as well, seemingly good ideas that just don't go anywhere. And I feel like I'm emblematic of somebody who had kind of like a very kind of like mediocre idea. I've never had a crazy killer idea that I've executed on. I've just had littler ideas, like a social network coding platform in the browser isn't like a life-changing, amazing idea that's reinventing any industry. But it was largely, it's just kind of a mediocre idea that we're slowly growing and evolving and polishing over time to hopefully make a pretty happy, healthy, sustainable kind of business. So I would say that hopefully, even if your idea is just kind of mediocre, what it actually takes is a lot of time and dedication and persistence. That's like a bigger deal than the core idea. So hopefully it's something that you just really like. I've made my whole career out of talking to front-end designers and developers about what they're doing and getting better at their thing. And I just realized that I like doing that. Those are my kind of people. So if I can build something where I just keep getting to talk to and hang out with and build things for those kind of people, that's great. So who are your people? Who do you like in the world? What are you into? Like, can you come up with a mediocre idea to sort of serve those people and polish it over a decade? That would be my entrepreneurial advice for you.
Just to wrap it up, Chris, with CodePen, you said you've got loads of ideas, you and your other founders. Where would you like CodePen to be in like 2 years' time? What direction would you like it to be going down, really?
Yeah, that's tricky. There's one path for us that's much more educational. That's like, let's dig in here, and even if we don't serve education, like we don't teach you directly, there's ways for CodePen to evolve that serve institutions that do teaching. So can we make a product that's really like designed for teaching? Is different and would be a different evolutionary path for us, one that we may or may not go down, Another one is being more of a direct part of a developer's workflow day to day. That's one thing that CodePen only tiptoes in, but I'd say for the most part, people don't use it for that. Like when you sit down to do development work, you have this serious tool set over here that you're using. And CodePen is a little bit more playgroundy, or just like I mess around in here or do little client things over here, but it's not the real website. It's not part of my development workflow. And there's certainly ways that we could evolve our tooling to be more of a straight up integral part of a development workflow, which would be cool. And that's another road for us to go down. So a lot of those things are, or we can, we could go more down the content road. We could have loads of, build content, curate content in interesting ways, and be more of like a magazine for art, and worry more about sponsorships and stuff like that. There's like, should we go native on a bunch of platforms and make a code editor for native platforms that brings the comfort of CodePen there? That's another path we could go down. There's paths so in 2 years' time, I hope that we've chosen at least a couple of those paths to explore deeply. And I can't tell you which one it's going to be yet. Obviously we know more internally that I'm sharing with you here. Yeah. There's plenty of places to evolve. It's not just going to be like, let's slap a new coat of paint on the homepage and hopefully we sell some accounts. And there's definitely more deep kind of thinking about what CodePen is to people.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, because it sounds exciting. Obviously you've got a lot of choices there in your founders, but you've shared some pathways and they truly do sound exciting, Chris. And I'm sure you and John and the people that you've helped, we all wish you and your founders great success in the next couple of years, Chris.
Thank you.
It's been a joy talking to you, and like I say, I've benefited myself from your website and from your videos. So that comes from the heart, really, Chris.
I accept your good wishes of success.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to wrap it up now, folks. And like I say, next week we'll be talking to somebody doing something really interesting with WordPress. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye.
Bye.
Hey.